what were your favorite jobs you had, best and worst jobs, kind of thing? Didn't you have to kind of do that?
The best job that actually dovetailed with writing was waiting tables, because it was, you could go in, you could be good at it, it was social, which writing is not, and you had cash. And when you left, you were done. You know, you didn't have to think about it again until you went to work the next day, or maybe in time to make sure you have a clean shirt to go to work the next day. As far as jobs that were fun to do, I was a radio DJ. I was in a non-programmed alternative rock station, which was a blast. It was like, you know, the best, you know, HBO sitcom you could imagine was working, you know, in radio. It was great fun. So those are, you know, they were both really good jobs for their own reasons. I did other things that were more professional and you made more money at, but as far as the things that were fun to do or dovetailed with writing better, those were the two things. How about you? Because Ian did stuff.
Yeah, I waitered, I bartended, I actually worked in construction for a little while, so I've kind of done a lot of different jobs, and the key, probably the hardest thing, is that when you're done with that, is to be able to go and write.
That's why construction doesn't work, because
Yeah.
I'd be so burned.
You are.
Yeah, you're just so tired you can't do anything. And writing stuff, I wrote advertising. I couldn't do shit I couldn't write anything after I'd written advertising all day. You need to do work that doesn't use the same skill set. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's much easier to wait tables and write books than it is to try and write advertising and then write books, for some reason. So, you had a second question?
I've got way more than that.
Are you taking notes?
Oh, yeah.
Good, because the rest of you will have to get your notes from her when the test comes.
His first book of yours I read was Lamb, and there's so much in there that I was not expecting to find. And I was wondering, like, especially when you first started writing, was there anything that you felt really uncomfortable with, or like embarrassed to put down, where you just like, it has to be in the story, and like, how did you get more comfortable talking about the graphic things you thought?
I kind of get what you're saying. There's certain things that, there are jokes that you just don't do because you just go, okay, there's just, that might be funny, but
Too much.
yeah, it's and if there are people who really, if that's a high developed sense, they can't write funny stuff, you know. But there's just certain things you go, I think I'll skip the pedophile joke, you know, or you know, I think I'll just sort of skip past the cancer joke, but my father was dead by the time I was publishing books, and my mother thought that I was a journalist. So, so I didn't have that conscience, you know, which a lot of people do. I think they're afraid their mom's gonna, oh my God, he wrote about blowjobs. But I didn't really have that. The only thing I stayed away from, or tried to stay away from for years and years and years, was anything that was mean-spirited. You know, that was the line. It wasn't if it was dirty or offensive to this group or that, but if it was mean-spirited, I would try not to write it. And then the Bush administration happened. And it was like, okay, that's out the window. I will say some mean shit about these guys. But it didn't end up in the books because I don't write political books. So. But that was my line, is that, you know, I didn't want to be a dick. You know, I wanted to be funny and maybe acerbic, but I didn't want to be a complete jerk. For just the reason, you know, especially easy targets, you know. So that was my line, was to not be mean-spirited. So does that help? Yeah. So one more question. Sure.
What's the most hurtful piece of criticism that you grew from?
I'm trying to think what stupid person said that. I think my work got better when Coyote Blue came out. There was one I got good reviews, except I think the Boston Herald. I mean, this is, you know, 18 years ago or something like that. So that's how much this stuff does affect you, and you learn, don't read those reviews. but the character, the main female character in that is sort of a dumb California blonde, which I'm sure is a mythical creature. But this guy kind of really took me apart for the female character being a bit of an airhead. And I think that my reaction to that was writing, in my next book would be Bloodsucking Fiends, and it was Jody, who is this very sharp, you know, she's still working class and kind of a normal person, but she's really smart and she's really sharp and she's sort of really developed. And I think that probably informed everything I did from that point forward, even though the character in Coyote Blue is not mythical at all. It was based on a real person, kind of, or at least people I'd met. There was it was obvious that there was a certain attention I needed to pay to dimensions, even if there are shallow people out there. So that was, and particularly when it came to female characters. And I think I started writing better female characters after that. You know, but I don't have to take the kind of line-by-line criticism that Ian does. So he would probably be able to answer you better than that, because you get everything that you do has some lawyer. Here, you answer.
Well, no, I mean, when you're writing for a studio, for example, you know, you have a room full of executives that are literally pulling stuff apart, and you have to constantly make adjustments. So, but you learn early on. You know, you learn what to avoid, and you know, that's one of the things when I'm teaching students, and you know, they have these grandiose ideas of being, you know, on tours and stuff, and you know, I'd love to see that, of course, but the reality is the business dictates what you do, and you know, we have to adhere to that, you know, because they're the ones writing the check. You know, and if you don't, then they'll find a writer who will do it. So, you know, that's the thing I like about writing books much better, is that there's far less cooks in the kitchen.
So, do you want to give logistic instructions? What we find works is that if you've just got the Griff and you want Ian and I to sign the Griff, then sort of maybe have a line for those people, and then those of you who have like my list, then you can let those other people go first so that they can go, because you know that nobody got parking here. And so, is that okay with you?
Yeah. Sure. Can we?
Oh, and thanks for coming.